Now, if you happen to be watching our business news this morning, you would have noticed a coverage of a school, Basics International. And, you know, the founder has been helping so many young women find themselves and become, you know, find their full potential and all of that. Now, she's right here with us. We're going to have a conversation with her, find out how it all began, and let's get right into it. She's called Patricia Wilkins, and she's here with us. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so how did Basics International begin?
Okay, so first I want to say that Basics International is not a school.
Okay.
We're an institution, we're an NGO. We provide school services,
Okay.
we place children in school, we teach, we mentor, we do a lot of things,
Okay.
but we just don't want to be boxed in as we're a school.
Yeah.
So Basics started 20 years ago from, I would say, a love, a passion, a calling of my own. About 21 years ago, about 22 years ago, I started doing volunteer work where I was living in New York, and
Okay.
that sort of grew into a bigger passion. And
Okay, so hold on. So you're not Ghanaian?
I'm a Ghanaian.
Okay, explain.
I'm a Ghanaian. I became a Ghanaian in 2019.
Okay.
So
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I am a Ghanaian.
Okay.
Originally from the USA. My parents are American. So
Okay.
but I got my Ghanaian citizenship.
What was it that brought you to Ghana? What drove you to Ghana? What was the passion? What was that? Because I can feel a lot of passion here.
It was passion, but we only have a small segment, but so
Yeah.
to get into it, I would say even ignorance brought me to Ghana.
Okay. Okay.
The will to help came from a passion and a calling.
Okay.
I was in Russia for 1 year prior to coming to Ghana, and after serving in Russia, I really wanted to come to the continent. I say my ignorance because I didn't know much about Africa, and I chose Ghana because it was English speaking.
Okay.
Liberia was my first choice, but they were still going through a war.
Issues of the war.
Yeah, so I chose Ghana. It was peaceful, and I felt that it was easy for me to navigate because of the language. So I came here with the intentions of volunteering wherever and whoever wanted to receive me for about 6 months. I gave myself 6 months. And within a month, I realized it wasn't going to be 6 months because it was quite hard to find. 20 years ago, it was really hard to find places to volunteer. And although people were saying, yeah, sure, come in, it was just, and then I also saw children who were not going to school.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got here, I saw something completely different of what I expected. And so that kind of put a drive in me to start my own organization that I can focus on things that I felt was important, and yeah.
Fantastic. So how many children have you taken off the streets so far?
Statistically, our organization says we're about 3,000 children that we have provided sponsorship to.
Okay.
The number exceeds in who we have given support to. We've given families. We haven't, every sort of support we give doesn't end in us giving sponsorship. Sometimes we just help. Like, for instance, yesterday we gave out uniforms to random children we saw in the street that had, you know, torn uniforms. So they don't go under our sponsorship program, but they go under our support program. But we have about 3,000 that we have sponsored.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot of.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
Okay, so we're looking at some images on the screen there. You can just see that there. Can you sort of walk us through? What are we looking at? Who are we looking at?
Sure. So the photos that we're looking at is our current center, which we built in 2010.
Okay.
This is based in Choko.
Okay.
And on March 16, when the government closed down the schools, we closed down for about 3 days, and then we came back and we realized this was a time that the community needed us more than ever.
Okay.
So we extended our programs and created a feeding program. Children were given individual bowls bowls and spoons so we didn't have to wash them.
Yeah.
They were given masks, and we provided food. We provided tablets for each child, so they came in. So from March to date, until schools reopen, that's what we provided to the children.
Wow.
So you see they're eating a nice meal.
And they look very happy.
They are happy.
They look very happy.
Our children are happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So after all these years,
Sure.
has the passion waned or become stronger?
I would say the passion is stronger, and I can only sort of base that or measure it on. I wake up every morning and the drive is still there to get up and go.
Okay.
And that's a big thing. I don't wake up and say, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
I think COVID could have represented a great opportunity for me to say,
it's enough.
It's enough. But it didn't. After those couple of days where we stayed home, I also had COVID. I got COVID in May.
Wow.
And even then, I didn't say I want to give up. So I believe the passion is still there. And unfortunately, it's because the need is still there.
Yeah.
If the need went away, sure, then you can kind of relax and say, no. But unfortunately, the need is still there.
It's still there. So let's talk a little bit about your COVID experience.
Sure.
How was that, first of all?
It was scary. I would think the first thing is fear. Fear takes over you the most. Denial. I listened to your earlier segment and we talked about symptoms. I think the first week that I had it, I kind of said I thought I had it.
Okay.
And because I didn't have a fever, and other people were like, oh, you don't have a fever. Oh, you don't have this. Oh, you're breathing fine. So I went about a week before I went to get tested.
Oh.
And meanwhile, I did have headaches and I had runny nose. So when I got it, even the first week wasn't so bad. The second week, it hit me so bad.
Wow.
At the time, the doctors wanted to hospitalize me. There were no beds. So I had to get medical care in my home.
And this was when?
This was in May and June.
Okay, so this is like the early part of COVID. Okay.
Sure.
Wow.
And there were no beds then. And it hurt me. One of the things that I told my children in Chokor is I had money and I had access to the best health care, and I was given. If an average person who's not making maybe money or have access or parents that can send them money, what would they do?
What would they do? Yeah.
So for me, it was moments where your fever went up, fever went down. I passed kidney stones during this period.
Oh, wow.
And I had no problems with kidney stones. I'm a healthy person. So for me, I didn't get a negative test until about 40 days after.
Okay.
So I had it for over a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. Even now, we don't know if I have antibodies, if I can't get it again, or so I'm always paranoid. I think I've taken about 6 tests since I heard about the free testing. I'm really happy about the free testing because for me, I go and get tested, and that's 500 Ghana cedis each time.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Okay, so let's come back to your kids.
Sure.
How are they doing in terms of their health generally and COVID and everything else?
So far, we thank God that we haven't had any COVID tests. When I was infected, we obviously took a decision as an organization and family and friends, and we tested, and nobody was positive. So it was obvious that I didn't spread it. And I would say that that's because we put the strictest protocols in. We have hand washing stations outside the gate. We have hand washing stations when they get inside the gate. We're sanitizing. We're wearing really masks. We're trying. So we've had that. There are still health problems, and that's a little concern on our part that everyone's concentrating on COVID. But communities like Chokor, we still have things like TB, and we still have typhoid, and we have all of these other illnesses, and hospitals are inundated with COVID, and that's a big issue. But we are just making sure we're giving vitamins and we're feeding healthy. We believe that the feeding program is a huge contribution to keeping everyone healthy. If someone has a meal and they're keeping their immune system up.
Fantastic. So your headquarters is in Chokor?
Chokor.
Okay. Do you have any other centers around the country?
So in 2000, when I first started, I was very aggressive, and I was, you know, like gun-ho. So when we talk about the passion, obviously some of it has, you know, and also age.
Yeah.
I'm getting older, so we were in a lot of areas. We were in Gomwa, we were in Adar, Oda,
Okay.
we were in Achimota, Dome. We were in so many different areas, and after about 3 years, we had to come back, and we realized that we can't spread ourselves so far. A lot of people always say, and I'm sure after this call, people will call and say, we need you here. And it's not to say that we won't go there. It's just that you have to be on top of the things that you do, and you have to give your all. So we decided in 2004 that we would concentrate on Chocó. Chocó needed our help. It's a lot of cases of teenage pregnancy and so many other things that were hindering children from going to school. So that's why we made that decision. We still do outreaches. For instance, during COVID, we went to the north to help the flood victims. And we brought, you know, almost 3,000 kilos of maize and rice and food items. African World Airlines sponsored about 872 kilos for us to ship goods up. So we were grateful for that. A lot of people gave money, and we went and we just delivered to the communities there. So we still do some outreach.
That's a fantastic lot of work that you do. Let's go back to the girls that you've taken off the streets.
Sure.
How do you identify those you decide that, okay, let's take these ones off the streets?
Sure. So the word street, we always, we were having a discussion on, you know, using the word street children. And, you know, last night I sent out the text that we got, you know, that I was going to be on to my kids. We're on WhatsApp. And I said to them, we're going to change the narrative, because not necessarily, I think it's not even a narrative of, you know, who's labeled and what's not labeled. It's also what we think of street children. The other day, one of our girls she was a street child. She was selling on the streets. She was out there, but not every child that we help is on the streets. A child that's just not going to school. In Chocó, you see so many children just being left. We might say those are street children. So it depends on how we defined it. So for us, we're in a community. We've been there for 20 years, so people know us. We also know the community. We walk around. Schools opened last week. So if I'm just walking down the road to just get watching, and I'm seeing during school hours, their kids off, you know,
not in school.
Not in school. We're going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation. Why are you not in school? Is this a one-off? Is it just today? Is it a problem? If it is just today, then let's deal with that. If you didn't have money or there's some issue at school, we may walk you to school and get you in school. But if it's a long-term problem, we try to intervene and put them on our program.
Okay. Now, when you bring them onto your program, what do they go through? And also, I want you to address the issue of young children. Typically, you bring them into a new program. They were enjoying a certain freedom, as it were, lack of structure, lack of organization and order in their lives. They were enjoying that. You bring them in. There's going to be structure, there's going to be order, there's times to do things, there's times to... How has that been?
I think I need to hire you. I think you got it. Because we have a program called On My Way. It's a transition program. And that's when we said we're not a school, but we're school-like. So that's the most formal program of schooling that we have. It's more modeled like a kindergarten program. But in that program, you see 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds who have never gone to school or dropped out. And those kids, they don't need just ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They need to know how to use the toilet. They need to know how to use a fork. They need to know that school starts at 7:30. They need to know sit down. They need to know how to say please and thank you and not hit. They need to just know that they're going to be in a structure, in an environment for this amount of hours. These kids, as you said, 3, 4 years old, even 5 years old, they're on their own. Parents are going to work and they're just wandering around. So teaching structure is part of our transition program. And you see it. It's a very tough program because the kids are quite hard. They come in a gate. If you turn your back for 5 minutes, you're like, where are they? They're out the gate. So we work with some children. Some children it may take 6 months. Some children may take 1 year.
Okay.
Some children may take 2 years before we put them into mainstream school. So when they go into mainstream school, they're going there not just ready to write ABCs in their names, but they're going with the willingness that I love school and I'm here to stay.
Yeah.
Basics motto is about putting kids in school, but we know that our full work is about keeping kids in school.
Okay, so it sounds like you're almost like a perfect intermediary between the quote-unquote streets and the schools.
Yes.
But in terms of challenges, what has been your most difficult experience? I mean, I'm sure there have been several, but if you can think back and through the last 20 years, what would you say was your most challenging experience?
I would say that most challenging, there's a few. Challenging is that not every child wants to go to school. And not every parent wants their child to go to school.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get two that don't want the parent and the child. Sometimes you get the child, but you get the parent. You get the parent, you don't get the child.
Yeah.
So trying to convince those cases that school is important, it's very hard. And so you have to use whatever tactics, bribery, you have to use all sorts of things to get them in, threats to get them in. That's a challenging. Staff is a challenging.
Okay.
You know, I think it's now, NGO work is now becoming what we call sexy to do, but it's not. We're being taught in the universities, you know, let's go for the big companies, let's go for the media houses, let's go for the banks. So people are not thinking that. So
top quality graduates don't typically leave school and say, I want to help with an NGO.
Yes. Yeah. And we have a program called BUILT, Basics International Leadership Training Program, and we actually recruit college graduates. Because we realize college graduates are coming out with no work skills, but they're coming out with great expectations of wanting big money. So we're saying, even give us a year, give us 2 years, and come and build those administrative skills, those people skills, work skills. And trust me, you're going to go to these big organizations as a better person. As a better person. So for me, that was what I did a lot of youth employment when I was young. So these are the things that we're saying that our young graduates need to do when they're on break. So many of the students we tried to get, even when COVID stopped, we tried to get young people to come to work. This is what we do with our students, because we now have students that are in a university. And we tell them, even from the time you complete high school, even junior high school, you must learn to serve, because it's about working, it's about building your character. So that's one of our challenges, the workforce, human resources.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your successes in terms of, you started 20 years ago. Who are some of the older people that you brought up, mentored, have kept through the years? Have any of them come back and joined? Have they, any of them, what are some of the stories that you can share with us?
So we're always asked about success stories, and it's a little hard to always define a success story, and I would like to address that. Of course, a college graduate or a high school graduate is a success story, but for me, every day that we see a girl in Choctaw not pregnant and still in school is a success story for me. Yesterday I was sitting on the balcony and I was watching the kids close, and I just watched the girls walk down the street, and I was like, that's a success story. They're in their final year of junior high school. Those are success stories. But of course, the obvious are the ones that reach university. We've had students that have gone outside to university. We've had students that have gone to a Shashi University and graduated and now are working. They still are part of the organization. They come back and help sometimes. We have students right now at KNUST who's Obed Hay, who's doing his second year in history. And they serve constantly. We tell them, we have a saying, we are one. We are one. And so we believe that we are brothers keepers. So you should always, and because God people are sort of related, even if you're in Choctaw and you're older, most likely another child that's there is related to you somehow. So literally it really means that you're your brother's keeper. So we encourage it. It's sort of mandatory. We always tell the kids, we'll never ask you to pay back anything that you received here, because everything is free. But the one way you will pay back is serving. So it's a requirement.
Fantastic. I like that because I think the spirit of volunteerism over the years, I don't think I know enough of our history to be able to say whether it was present, maybe let's say 60, 70 years ago. But I have come to see that I see volunteerism in different places around the world, but not a lot of people want to be paid to volunteer. You know, people don't have the concept of, you know something, I've been blessed. Let me help. Let me give back. You know, and it's in small pockets. But tell me a little bit about that. How you've developed this in the kids so that I know a place like Ashese has really done well in terms of changing the minds of their students. So by the time they're finishing first year, they're already thinking, I'm looking for a community to go and help and serve. You know, tell us a little bit about volunteerism, your thinking about volunteerism, and how you inculcate that in your kids.
Sure. So for us, you know, it actually came at a negative perspective that we realized that we had to address this because we were always getting volunteers, and the volunteers didn't look like you or myself. So the kids were always seeing Europeans, white Europeans coming in and volunteering, and that also created some sort of disillusion, and also less pride in themselves or people of their color. So we had to also talk about that. We need to say that more African American, Black people need to volunteer. So we also started recruiting more from the U.S. But then we also had to say to the kids, volunteering doesn't mean that you have to be European, white to volunteer. You can be a volunteer and you don't need to be rich. You don't need to be to be blessed. You need to understand that when you volunteer, you are blessing someone and a blessing will come back to you. So we tell them, give. We do it right in our community. We have done service projects where the kids had to go and find an elderly person and clean their room, paint their room. If we had old furniture, let's go and donate it. So it's about service, and we teach them it's important. You do not wait till you get rich to do that. It's so important.
I love that. I really like that. So just to sort of wrap up our conversation, are there any important things you want people to know about what you've been doing, Basics International?
I think one of the things is that it's not easy. A lot of people think it's easy. It's 20 years. We've accomplished a lot. There are a lot of setbacks. You have to constantly pivot. One of our pivots was a few years ago when we saw some of our girls that were dropping out of school. And we go, should we close our eyes to them? And sure, because first, that's your first instinct is, okay, you got pregnant, you know, you fell out of what we told you to do. So we don't want to. And we realized we can't do that. So we needed to say, how can we help them? And one of the things is I learned how to sew when I was young. I studied sewing. I studied fashion design. So we always taught sewing, hairdressing, screen printing in our place. So a few years ago, we decided to create a social enterprise part. And our young girls or young women who dropped out, or girls that even completed high school, but not college ready, were not university ready. They had no interest in it, but they liked sewing. So we created another program called Hejule. And women sew and they make things. They make upcycle.
So that's the video where there was a video on the screen a little earlier on of the children sewing.
Yes, of them sewing. Fantastic. They make things and we sell them at the Du Bois Center every month. And they make income from that. So what they sew, they make income. So they learned how to quilt. So they make bed quilts and bed runners, and we make bags and upcycle things and recycle. So they do all sort of wonderful things. Is that yes?
Fantastic.
So those are some of the ladies, and out of I think 4 of those are products of Basics, and 2 are from the community. So Bintu, she finished high school about 5 years ago, and she didn't have the grades to go to the university, and she didn't really have an interest at that time to go to the university, but she wanted to learn fashion design, so we sent her for an apprenticeship.
So and that's a video of the...
And she now runs the program. So Bintu is the production supervisor of it. And so they're doing great with that.
How old was she when you picked her up?
7 years old.
Wow.
She was 7 years old and she was selling choco in the streets. had not gone to school. And so she just turned 25 last week. And yeah, so those are success stories. Yeah. And sometimes somebody would say, beautiful. Oh, that's not a success story, but that's a wonderful success.
One.
Yes.
It's a big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's my dream. I tell the kids all the time, this is for you. So when you ask, are they coming back? We're preparing them to come back. We're preparing whatever path they're taking, whether they're in a university, that in a few years that I can retire. Yeah. It's time. It's definitely time. And that they run it.
Fantastic. Any social media handles you can put out there? People want to look for you?
So Basics International, which is BASICS International, is our Instagram and our Facebook page. Yeah, follow us, like us.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you for sharing this wonderful experience, this wonderful story with us. We have been speaking with Patricia Wilkins, who is the founder and executive director of Basics International, situated in Choco, and they're doing amazing NGO work. We'll be right back.